All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Mr. Mohammed Najib, who's a war correspondent and also a security analyst, is joining us live from the occupied Palestinian territories of Ramallah in West Bank. Mr. Najib, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, looking at what is unfolding in the region from a Palestinian perspective, how do the Palestinians look at this war that has broken out?
Yeah, actually, it is escalation that postponed the implementation of the second phase of Gaza agreement. So since the outbreak of this war 13 days ago, the board of peace that was established by President Trump and headed by Netanyahu frozen and suspended its activities for Gaza, and they keep the Rafah crossing closed and no move to the implementation of the second phase. Here also in the West Bank, the Israeli authorities tighten its security restrictions and the freedom of movement and blockade the West Bank, and some of the rockets or intercepted defense projectiles from Israelis falling over the West Bank cities and towns and houses of Palestinians. And for sure they know that if Israel win against Iran, it will support the right-wing government ministers' policy against Palestinians, so that will encourage them to practice more pressure on the Palestinians in the West Bank.
Right now, the Israelis are also carrying out large-scale attacks inside of Lebanon. At this moment, do you see how that new front that the Israelis have in fact opened inside of Lebanon progressing?
Yes, actually, when the Hezbollah launched rockets toward Israel last week, it was an excuse to Israel to launch a ground invasion of southern Lebanon and to create a buffer zone and to target Hezbollah leaders, and which also forced some 700,000 Lebanese to be displaced from southern Lebanon to Beirut, and to Israelis operate in the southern suburb of Beirut, which is the stronghold of Hezbollah. So yes, the escalation with Hezbollah and also Hezbollah rockets arrive to Israel more dangerous than the Iranian missiles, as it is coming from a close distance, and also they have strong intelligence about Israeli targets. So Hezbollah annexation or join the front against Israel is an unprecedented escalation and taken very serious by the Israelis, who dedicated a lot of force and efforts, military efforts, to crack down on Hezbollah and destabilize the situation in Lebanon.
Now, Mr. Najib, one of Donald Trump's cornerstone of his foreign policy was to put in place those Abraham Accords, where many of these Arab nations are in many ways making it official to have diplomatic relations with the state of Israel. In your assessment, this war that is now broken out in the Middle East because of this American act of aggression along with the Israelis on Iran, what do you think this does to the Abraham Accords and also to those nations like, for instance, Saudi Arabia, who from behind the scenes were perhaps mulling on, especially the Americans were trying to get the Saudi Arabians to also sign the Abraham Accords? What do you think happens to those talks?
After 7 October and the Israeli war in Gaza, the Abraham Accords and the possibility of Saudi Arabia normalization with Israel put on the side, and Saudi Arabia is not encouraged to go ahead when it said that how Israel cracked down on the Palestinians in Gaza. And now, with the Israeli escalation against Iran, and which led Iran to react against Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries, so that makes the situation more difficult, because Saudi Arabia called on the Americans before not to attack Iran because they know they will retaliate against the Saudi Arabia as well as other Gulf countries, and which was also disturbing for them that the U.S. defense system dedicated to defend Israel from Iranian missiles more than defending the Gulf countries from the Iranian missiles. So Israel and the United States caused the falling of those missiles from Iran against those Gulf countries, And at the same time, the American bases there didn't defend the Gulf countries from the Iranian missiles. Mainly it was dedicated and directed to defend Israel. And I think this will mount anger among the upset among the Gulf countries, and this will not encourage them to expand Abraham Accords and the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel after the stop of this war.
Right. Now, you brought up the American military bases that exist in the Gulf, and a lot of people say that this is a war that will potentially change the Middle East one way or another. It's still difficult to predict as to which way this war is, of course, headed. Now, the American and the logic of the GCC nation was that these military bases of the Americans were a necessity. They provided security for the region. But looking at what has played out in this war, the reason why the GCC nations have in fact come under attack by Iran because of this war is precisely because the Americans have got their military bases in these different GCC nations in the Middle East. In your assessment, what do you think will be the talk within the Arab capitals about having these American military bases on their soil and the security that they actually claim to provide?
Actually, those countries allow the presence of those U.S. military bases there. They thought they will defend them from any attack from Iran. But what's happened? They didn't. They tried to defend Israel. And because they are there, they become a target for Iranian missiles and destroy their infrastructure. And it is terrible for them. And today, the Mojtaba Khamenei, the new Iranian leader, says or called on the Gulf countries to kick out those military bases. Otherwise, they will be targeted. So we are going to witness more escalation of targeting by Iranian missiles against those and the drones against those military bases. So it's used as an excuse by Iran to attack those countries. But also, if we look about the number of missiles and drones that directed to the United Arab Emirates, it's 3 times triple than what directed toward Israel right now since the outbreak of this war 15 days ago. So it is close to Iran and it is easy target for them. So they harmed the Gulf countries more than helped them by having those military bases. But they can't also force the Americans because they have defense allies. Right. And unfortunately, these defense allies didn't work well at this exam with the escalation with Tehran.
All right. Now, my final question to you is this. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu started this war. In fact, Netanyahu seems to have gone all in to this war along with Donald Trump. In your assessment, what do you think will be the result of this war for the future of Benjamin Netanyahu, who at this moment is the longest serving prime minister within the state of Israel?
It depends on how this war will be ended. Today I was talking to senior Israeli defense and security officials, and they are concerned that Trump, who is moody, and maybe wake up and declare victorious victory against Iran and order Israel to stop the war before this destruction of the virtual uranium for 160 kilograms, and that will mean that even Israelis killed the senior Iranian leadership, but they didn't topple the regime and they didn't totally eliminate the ballistic missiles and the nuclear program. So that will mean is not a good thing for the future of Netanyahu, who hopes by attacking Iran will enhance his chance to win the coming elections in Israel and maintain a political leader of Israel for more years. But it depends how it will be end. And really, there are concerns by the Israelis. First of all, if it is last for a long time, it will have a bad impact on the Israeli economy, and the Israelis cannot bear a long war time. All Israeli wars since 48 right now, they were short wars for 6 days, 12 days, like 25 June confrontation with Iran. But if it is lasted as Iran planned now to have it a long bleeding war with Israel, so that will be bad on Netanyahu's future in politics.
Interesting. We'll have to see as to how that plays out. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mohammed Najib, for joining us from the occupied Palestinian territories, from the city of Ramallah there, and getting us this perspective.
Thank you.